We've got very important confrontational news coming up in this segment about giant pink underpants in South Asia, and I want you to stay with me for that. But first, we start with a little news from Afghanistan and life during wartime. On the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, one of the most contentious issues continues to be our country's use of drone aircraft to shoot missiles at targets on the Pakistani side of the border. Pakistanis have vigorously protested the attacks by the drones, and the Pakistani government has protested right alongside with them. The Pakistani Prime Minister and President have repeatedly publicly demanded that the U.S. stop these drone strikes, calling them counterproductive and intolerable. Now, the suspicion, east and west, has been that despite the public protests from the Pakistani government, they've sort of tacitly approved of these strikes in order to maintain relations with Washington. Publicly, they protest, in other words, but maybe privately they're giving the green light. That delicate little undemocratic do-si-do got sort of exposed this week, apparently by accident, when in a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing in Washington, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, California Senator Dianne Feinstein, expressed surprise at the Pakistani government's protests against the drone strikes. She said, quote, "As I understand it, these are flown out of a Pakistani base." They what? Ixnay on the Akistani pay, Aces Bay, Octay, Senator Einstein Fay. If we are flying those drones out of a Pakistani base, we had never admitted to it publicly before. And it is certainly nothing that the Pakistani government had ever admitted to. Senator Feinstein's office is energetically rejecting the idea that the senator's statement was a slip-up. They're saying that the senator was just referring to a Washington Post story that made that same allegation last March. Whether or not the senator was just discussing public news reports or spilling some big, horrible, politically toxic beans here, there is, of course, the fact that maybe we ought to know the truth about who we're bombing and with whose help. I mean, yay, operational security and everything, but yay, our government leveling with us about what our military is doing in our name, too. Right? And finally, while we are in this very exciting part of the world, a final strange and wonderful activist confrontation story from India that's actually sort of a little bit about Valentine's Day. It starts with bad news here, but I promise, stick with me, it gets better. Last month, in the Indian city of Mangalore, young men from a right-wing Hindu group stormed into a bar and beat up young women inside the bar for the horrible crime of them being female and having a drink in a bar in a supposedly sort of free country. About 30 of the men were arrested. The attack was filmed. The footage has been broadcast on national television in India, often with commentary portraying the right-wing attackers as a sort of Indian Taliban. That same group of Hindu conservatives has been threatening to disrupt any celebrations of Valentine's Day this weekend in India, saying that Valentine's Day is against Indian culture. Now, in response, Facebook to the rescue. A group of Indian women formed a Facebook group earlier this month to fight back against the religious conservatives by mocking them with panties. You know, given the choice of weapons of war, put me on the side of panty-warfare any day. Because the conservative Hindu activists are mocked anyway as chadiwalas, as men who wear big, ugly women's underpants. The online activists have called on people everywhere to send, literally to mail, big, ugly, cheap, pink chadis, pink women's underpants to these religious conservatives on the occasion of Valentine's Day. The women and their supporters are calling themselves the Consortium of Pub-Going Loose and Forward Women. And just so you know, of course, we asked their spokeswoman if she could be on the show with us from India tonight. Turns out she is a zillion miles from a TV studio, and we couldn't make it work. But I'm very proud to say that she emailed us that she really likes this show, which I think means we're all in the consortium of pub-going, loose and forward women together now. Cheers.